greater good for doctors is that they will only work for 40 hours. Of course, that will have to wait for about 60 days. But that the emergency call allowance will be changed to a doctor's allowance, which means, and what we agreed in the CBA is that the extra hours worked shall be paid as per the law. I think for those who know that they are the body gazetted rates, and I think therefore, and that's why for me, I think the doctors have gained much more than they were asking for, because and that's why we had the wisdom change the emergency call allowance to doctor's allowance, because we knew in the CBA now it's 40 hours. So in essence, actually, the doctors have gained a lot for very many years to come. There's something else called a scheme of service. If you look at one of the return to work formula, doctors will be placed in the correct job groups upon signing of this agreement. So there's a scheme of service that we developed last year as a union and the Ministry of Health that already in itself gives doctors a one job group upgrade for majority of them, because you find the medical officer only stays in a job group for 1 year, the M. So you finish internship, then you're in job group M for only 1 year, then you go to N. And then if you're a consultant with a master's degree, whether it's in medicine or in administrative health economics or whatever it is, you go directly to job group Q. So that's also another very great benefit, because right now what has been causing strikes at the county level before this strike were issues of promotions. So now all doctors who are consultants who have stagnated, some in job group P for forever, some in job group M like in Nairobi County, they will now have to be placed in their correct job groups, which is Q and above. So essentially what this return to work formula also means is that if you're a medical officer and you are more than 1 year in service, you should not be in job group M. Okay? So all medical officers, except the ones that were just employed recently, will be in N, and those ones who have stayed for more than 4 years will definitely go to P. So in essence, if you look at the net gain for the doctors in terms of salaries, it's probably much more than 80,000 shillings for each.
We know all too well that the problem is with implementation.
Moving forward, we have to ensure that we hold counties and the national government accountable. And if you look at again that return to work formula, up there it's written that pass 1 to strike notice and the ruling. So that ruling is where we are going to file this return to work. And what that means is that the court itself will monitor the implementation. But beyond the court, we also have the people who are mediating, the religious leaders, the Law Society of Kenya, the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights. And this is a public interest issue. So I don't think that there should be any county that wants to take us back to the dark ages of not having doctors in the hospital by refusing either to interpret or to implement simple things. But moving forward, I think the most important thing in any implementation is what we call goodwill. And goodwill is based on restoring relationships. And for us as a union, we have a very long journey to restore relationships, because we want to work in harmony with the employer to improve things just for everyone, for every single citizen. So we know that there will be some challenges in implementation, especially for the first few months. And yes, of course, we want to tell the members of the public to also keep vigil, because this has been a public interest issue. In fact, the doctors have been on this strike simply because the Kenyans have supported this strike. So we've had moments. I think for me, I want to, after some time, I will start writing a series on this particular industrial dispute, just so that we can all draw lessons, but more importantly, so that there can be documentation. I will start writing a small series on the strike.
Talking of jail,
Yeah.
how was that experience?
Wow, jail is not good. It's not. You don't wish it for your enemy. Jail takes away life and hope from you. And I think for us, for me particularly, we will forgive those who jailed us, but it's something that we will never forget. We will never forget it, and it's not. I think we didn't do any wrong to be jailed, and I think that's part of this strike being mishandled. Threats, intimidation, jailing. My experience in jail was jail in itself is not good, but the people in jail are very friendly. I found prisoners of taking medical camps and particularly for me taking a television to committee.
Tomorrow we expect the State of the Nation address by the President.
Yeah.
What do you expect him to say in regards to the healthcare sector?
You know, we've had the privilege of meeting the head of state during this strike, and we want to thank him because I don't think there's any other union that has met the head of state when they are on strike. And I think that was a show of good gesture when we went to Mombasa. There are three things that the head of state said in Mombasa, and I have said this before. Number one, he said the health sector needs reforms. Number two, he said that doctors need a different grading structure. And number three, he said that we need a health service commission. I can't speak for what he will say, but I expect that given what has happened, given also his particular, he's put a lot of work into this strike to an extent that even at some point, just like us, he was also frustrated. But finally, it's to an end thanks to his efforts. I expect that maybe we'll draw a little bit of those lessons, particularly on issues of health reforms moving forward, and particularly on the issue of health service commission and doctors having a different grading structures. Otherwise, then we will always have this cycle, and this is not good for our country.
So let's stay with that story. In just hours to the State of the Nation address by Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenyan doctors have signed a deal to end their strike and resume duty.
The deal ends 100 days of death, pain and agony for Kenyan patients who depend on the public healthcare system, and the doctors walk away with less than half of what they had been demanding for.
KTN's Victor Tunina has those details.
The strike is hereby called off.
After 100 days of grandstanding, failed mediation efforts, collapsed stocks, unfulfilled court directives, the doctors' pay dispute was characterized by intrigues. So the president lose his cool. The government withdraw its offer to doctors and pull out of negotiations. But finally, parties in the dispute agreed on a return-to-work formula. At the Council of Governors headquarters, parties put pen to paper. The Doctors' Union, Council of Governors, and the Ministry of Health signed the return-to-work formula with the Interreligious Council among the witnesses.
This brings to an end one of the most painful experiences in the labor relations in this country.
Those 100 days, as we mentioned them as professionals in the health sector, they will remain black pages in the history of practice of medicine in this country. Indeed, so black that we can count across the world, we will be ranked very highly. And that is not a record we want to keep.
In the return-to-work formula, parties agreed on, among other things, to have the collective bargaining agreement signed within 60 days, to stop all disciplinary processes, withdraw show-cause letters and dismissal letters given to the doctors who are on strike, to have the call allowance renamed doctor's allowance, to have the doctors get an additional 30,000 shillings in doctor's allowances and 20,000 shillings in risk allowances, and to have all court cases facing union officials withdrawn. But the Council of Governors, which last week told of the doctors, was not closing the chapter with an exchange of pleasantries.
We hope this will never be repeated again, where the whole country is held at ransom by an elite that completely refuses to see bigger national interests.
We hope it will never happen again in the history of this country, where we put ourselves first and the rest of Kenyans second. Yes, there are grievances. We must learn how to resolve them without occasioning pain to other people.
The return-to-work formula brings to an end one of the longest strikes in the country. 100 days of a headache for the government, 100 days of a struggle for doctors, 100 days of dozens of deaths,
some political news now. The infighting between Bomet Governor Isaac Ruto and his deputy Stephen Mutai took a curious turn today, as the deputy claimed that the Governor Ruto had purportedly sacked him and replaced him with the Bomet chief of staff.
Now, although it is unconstitutional, the deputy claims he has been fired for absconding duty.
Differences between Ruto and his deputy have been festering for a long time, but things are said to have become worse after Stephen Mutai declared he would challenge Ruto for the governor's seat this August.
Reacting to his deputy's comments, Governor Isaac Ruto has just told KTN News that he has not exactly sacked his deputy, but has merely given him time to go and campaign.
Ruto says his deputy has been away from work for more than a year.
This shows the highest impunity from the governor himself by just appointing somebody from nowhere to be the deputy governor. The law doesn't allow that. And therefore, I've just told him if he wants to sack me, let him follow due process and we meet in the court or at the Senate where I'm supposed to appear if there is anything I have not done. For a long time, I've been patient with the governor. The way he handles activities of the county is so personal. He runs the county as a personal property. At any time he thinks to move a staff, he moves them anywhere he wants without due process. In fact, the staff of county government of Bomet are suffered in the hands of Governor Isaac Ruto. He is somebody who doesn't respect any other person. He wants only to be praised, to be, whatever he says is final. He doesn't want to be challenged.
The fight against HIV and AIDS has just received a shot in the arm here in Kenya with the rollout of a drug that is said to reduce the risk of new infections by up to 96%. This move could put Kenya smack on the path of achieving our goal of reducing new HIV infections by 75% by the year 2019. As our Sharon Momani now reports, Kenyans need to remain as aware about and vigilant in curbing other sexually transmitted infections.
Is the blue pill wonder set to revolutionize the fight against HIV and AIDS in Kenya? Set to be officially rolled out by the government in April, the oral pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, is used on people who are HIV negative but who are at considerable risk of contracting HIV. When taken daily, PrEP drastically reduces the chances of infection.
Once it's in your body, it protects the body cells, sort of coats them, so that the virus does not enter the cells, because it takes the virus to get into the cell for you to be infected. So while the virus is circulating around and has not entered the cell, then the body will fight it and eliminate it.
For a country that for decades has seen the ravaging effects of the AIDS pandemic, this news is almost too good to be true.
Mimi ninataka niwapongeze madaktari ambao wamefanya utafiti sana mpaka wametoa dawa ambayo itakuwa inasaidia binadamu kuzuia ugonjwa ya ukimwi.
I think that the government is doing a good thing, especially for the discordant couples. Yeah, that's a really good move by the government, and also for the sex workers, because no one deserves to get HIV no matter what they do. Yeah, it's really good.
The drug, going by the trade name Truvada, only works for those who are HIV negative, and those to use the treatment must undergo medical screening before they are enrolled. It is specifically intended for those at high risk of infection, including those in HIV discordant relationships, that is, where one person is HIV positive and the other HIV negative, in sex workers, men who have sex with men, and young women. Research has shown that women between the ages of 15 and 24 are more at risk of contracting HIV than older women.
PrEP is not a vaccine. PrEP is a drug that you load your system to prevent you from getting an infection.
What has been in existence is a post-exposure prophylaxis, PEP, a 4-week course of ARVs recommended for emergency situations only. Critics of PrEP have expressed strong concerns that it could encourage sexually risky behavior, reduce condom use, and with that, increase the spread of other sexually transmitted diseases.
kwa kweli hiyo breath itafanya watu wakuwe too careless because they will just watajiachilia na watakosa maadili kwa jamii.
I also want to differ with many opinions that this vaccine will encourage promiscuity. All in all, we must embrace this vaccine and give it a test. The only worry is maybe the side effects that it may have and the misuse by many Kenyans. The message is PrEP is not a magic bullet. It needs to be used as part and parcel of the package of intervention, including correct and consistent use of condoms.
Kenya becomes only the second country in Africa to approve the use of Truvada after South Africa. Trials for this PrEP were conducted in Kenya in 2016, involving up to 1,700 people, mostly drawn from the high-risk groups.
PrEP, like any other medication, is not without side effects. And those side effects include things like nausea, vomiting. You may have a mild skin rash, and it can also add to or complicate an existing kidney disease. Therefore, that's why we are saying for you to start on PrEP, you must be screened.
A big question on the minds of many is the cost of this quote-unquote wonder drug.
For a beginning, we are going to offer this drug at no cost, thanks to the collaboration between the government of Kenya and our partners who have supported us. So first of all, we'll offer it in the public health care facilities that are going to be selected across the country. So in April, we'll be able to release that list of the health facilities. But if one wishes to access it privately, then it costs between 6,000 and 7,000 shillings per year.
The Kenya National AIDS Strategic Framework seeks to reduce new HIV infections by 75%. This latest strategy may just inch the country closer to this achievement, with a pill a day keeping HIV away. An estimated 1.6 million people are living with HIV in the country. This number may significantly reduce in the future should the PrEP drug be rolled out and used effectively. However, emphasis is being put on the need to use other measures in combination with this in order to curb a possible ripple effect of a rise in other STIs. Sharon Momani, KTN News, Nairobi.
So the doctor's strike was today called off after 100 days. A deal was reached, and we're asking our big Q, do you think that deal that they finally got to was worth Kenyans suffering for those 100 days?
It is reported the doctors walked away with less than half of what they had been demanding for. Very quickly, Nguku says on Twitter, it was so unfortunately tricky, but we thank God the storm is over. And Feli Wangari says on Twitter as well, a government should not wait for workers to strike to sort out labor issues.
Clifford Mate says, truth of the matter is, it's always the common mananchi who suffers. And Brenda Kibulo, no, Kenyans deserve the best medical care, but the long strike way out of humanitarian grounds.
Keep your tax and tweets back.
All right, you're watching KTN Prime here on KTN News. Stay with us. We still have more after this short break.
Welcome back to the broadcast. You're watching KTN Prime. Now, a section of legislators from the Kenyan opposition have planned to disrupt the last State of the Nation address by President Uhuru Kenyatta tomorrow afternoon if he will not first apologize to Kenyans for his recent utterances against elected leaders.
However, others have vowed to boycott the sitting at Parliament on grounds that the president will use the opportunity to campaign for his re-election, given that it is only less than 5 months to the August 8th elections.
In March last year, during the third State of the Nation address by President Uhuru Kenyatta, the session delayed for half an hour after opposition legislators disrupted his address by blowing whistles in protest. And after they persisted, Speaker Justin Muturi exercised his powers and ordered 7 ODM legislators out of the chambers, with Ugunja MP Opio Wandai being suspended for the remainder of the session.
Do whatever you want to do. But you cannot turn back the clock of history.
Well, will this one be any different from the last one, given that it will be the last State of the Nation address for President Uhuru Kenyatta before Kenyans go back to the ballot?
It is inconceivable that we would sit in parliament and listen to a president campaigning for his party under the guise of a State of the Nation address.
If the president would not apologize to the nation on his utterances, the language that he has been using, then I'm not going to be able even to give him even a single, not even a single minute to listen to him.
However, their colleagues in the ruling Jubilee Party have warned them against any attempts to heckle or disrupt the address by the president.
Every time we are told by the president, leave them alone, they tolerate. So this is a house of rules and law, and if they try anything to boo anybody, we'll discipline them. Not now the speaker, we'll discipline them.
We cannot allow where just a few individuals, without any standing at all, they take a national event and try to bring other issues that in fact are not meant for national unity, for cohesion.
Although the opposition legislators have not met to take a common stand to either disrupt the session or abstain from attending, most of them feel that the address, which is a constitutional requirement by the president, has lost traction and meaning.
We need to know, how much has he fought when it comes to matters of corruption? We've had scandals of NYS, we've had scandals of Eurobond, and last time the president was here, he was given a standing ovation. When he produced a list from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption of those people who are CSS to step aside, only to be told it was a PR exercise.
The president needs to be held to account. He needs to be answerable to the misdeeds that have been perpetrated by his administration, okay, insofar as creating disharmony in the country.
For our children, the president's State of the Nation address comes at a time when the Jubilee administration is facing challenges in the fight against runaway corruption in Kenya, insecurity in the North-East, and the cattle-rustling menace, inflation, and high cost of living.
We have also been managing, for example, the CDF funds. We should, first of all, even as the president is giving his report, ourselves we should be giving reports to the people who elected us.
We are all in government. We are the people who oversight this country, not the president. All members of parliament. And if they have failed, plus me, we have all then failed.
It is expected that both camps might hold separate parliamentary group meetings before the address in the afternoon. With the bad blood between the opposition and the Jubilee Party, all eyes will be on Parliament to see whether it will be a replica of last year's State of the Nation address, given that it is only less than 5 months to the August elections. Chris Dairo, KTN News.
Now, the Kenyan president addresses the nation just hours after doctors finally ended their strike.
One of the sectors whose progress President Kenyatta will be talking about tomorrow is the health sector, bedeviled by many problems.
But there are aspects of health devolution that Kenyans still can celebrate.
It has been 4 years of health services being run from the county level. Many felt and still feel that it was a noble concept to try bring the management of health services closer to the populace, where those in the counties would avoid long and tedious trips to the capital city, Nairobi. Dr. Charles Githenji is the County Executive Committee member in charge of health. He says Nyeri has made tremendous progress.
In Nyeri County, we have an elaborate healthcare system comprising of level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5 hospitals.
In his opinion as Minister for Health, Dr. Githenji expounds on the gains of health in Nyeri as a county.
Services that before could only be found in Obi, like MRI, like CT scans, like dialysis. In the last 3 years, we've been able to introduce them here in Nyeri.
The consensus from the meeting is that devolution is working and the people are happy about it.
Despite the several instances when counties have been hit by crisis in the health sector, Dr. Githenji says those calling for a return of the health docket to the national government don't know what they are talking about.
And it's a high time that the healthcare workers come to appreciate that county government are independent governments and they are employers of them.
Anne Caroline Modoni is a clinical officer at the Nyeri County Referral Hospital, a level 5 hospital that not only caters to patients from Nyeri County, but also attends to others from neighboring counties. She believes devolution of health was a noble idea, but one that has been poorly executed across counties.
For me, health with devolution, I think first and foremost, we're not ready for it. The repercussions have been too much. Basically from equipment, from medicine, from the workers, it's just been chaotic.
The county government of Nyeri also admits that there are bottlenecks to the efficient service delivery. Money is the biggest of them.
At the moment, the budget allocation, which is about 40% of the total county allocation, comes to about 2.5 billion. So we are less with about $1 billion. So you cannot expect us to deliver the service as it ought to be delivered because of that shortage.
The Nyeri citizenry too weighed in on the centrality of health in the assessment of devolution progress.
Waweze kuleta madawa kwa wakati ambao unafaa.
We don't have to go to KNH in Nairobi, but everything is now brought in the county.
Madawa mtu akitibiwa huku, kwa sababu nimeshaitibiwa huku, madawa sipatikani sana.
We are going to go a little bit further, improve, invest in human resource, invest in machinery, invest in doctors, invest in training so that we can become even better.
How has the provision of health services been since it was devolved as a function to the counties? What are the gains, if any? What are the setbacks and challenges? Of course, it depends on who you ask, but the general consensus is that a lot more needs to be done. Carol Derry, KTN News, Nyeri County. And of course, tomorrow, KTN News will have wall-to-wall coverage of that State of the Nation address as early as 6 a.m., giving you all the analysis, perhaps, of what to expect and where the country is at. And throughout the day, even the live speech by the president. So you definitely want to stay with us tomorrow as the president addresses the country. Now, watch what you say. That is the warning to Kenyan politicians from the National Cohesion and Integration Commission as it unveils an induction program for 211 hate speech monitors. The officers will be deployed across Kenya armed with recording equipment to nab hate mongers.
Persistent inability to successfully prosecute and secure conviction of hate speech perpetrators has painted NCIC as a toothless commission, and now they have launched training of 211 hate speech monitoring officers. The officers are currently receiving technical and legal training to equip them with skills to effectively deploy over 47 video cameras and 390 audio recorders for capturing crucial evidence against offenders as the general elections draw near.
Once nominations are over, we shall receive the nomination papers from the candidates. And that's the time when you'll know who has been barred and who has not been cleared.
The potential for conflict being aggravated by the current drought makes this year's elections very special, and NCIC has not left these factors out.
Drought and the lack of other related things must never be used as an excuse to trample underfoot the rights of other people.
Incitement has been blamed for past election chaos, notably the 2007-2008 violence, but use of audiovisual evidence from independent sources and media houses has been rejected in court for failing to provide sufficient context under which the alleged crimes were perpetrated. NCIC is partnering with the Media Council, Uyano Initiative, and UNDP, among others, in the latest initiative, with the 211 officers forming a crucial part of the effort till September 2017. Mark Namaswa, KTN News.
You're watching KTN Prime. Many thanks for staying with us. When we return, we have the latest from the world of business with Sophia. What do we have?
Yes, fuel prices, Ben, are up again, and also the Communications Authority is speaking on whether Safaricom will be split into two companies. So stay with us for that and more.
Don't go too far. Sophia has the details.
Welcome back to KTN News. Let's now talk business. And the Communications Authority of Kenya has disclosed that it will not be punishing mobile phone service provider Safaricom for holding a dominant position in the telecommunications sector. The new stance by the regulator puts a twist to a matter that has elicited mixed reactions among stakeholders. The regulator further downplayed a leaked draft report, noting that there are no intentions to split Safaricom into two companies. Rather, they will be putting in place safeguards to avoid abuse of dominance. KTN's Abiagina has the latest.
After weeks of unending speculation, the Communications Authority of Kenya has come all out, declaring they will not be taking any action to curtail successful businesses in the telecommunications sector, despite them being dominant players.
Raised to early fears that the authority is planning to split the business of some market players or take such drastic actions that may destabilize dominant market players.
We are now, I must say, midway in concluding the draft competition report.
The new stand by CA follows a similar position announced last week by RGT Cabinet Secretary Joe Musheru. This is despite recommendations by UK-based research firm Analysis Mason that fronted Safaricom be split into two companies to cut off the M-Pesa business to become a single entity.
Our intention is to follow the process and conclude it in accordance with the law.
May I take this opportunity to set the record straight that the authority has not released the competition study as purported in some quarters.
The draft competition study report, which is in custody of the regulator, is currently being deliberated by the board and will be subjected to input from sector stakeholders before a final report is released and published via a gazette notice.
The gist of my statement is that those players who are doing well must be encouraged to continue doing well, and those not doing so well must be supported in order to improve and do better.
CA Director General Francis Wengusi has maintained that the report findings will be taken as the professional opinion of the consultants, pending more consultations by the stakeholders. Splitting East Africa's largest mobile phone operator, Safaricom, in other respects, is set to see a rise in transaction costs for money transfer, which could hit consumers hard and stifle growth, according to the company.
I further wish to note it is not the authority's intention to punish success, but to enhance competition so as to foster growth of the telecoms subsector.
On the contrary view, telco players such as Orange and Airtel hold the view that if the dominance dilemma is addressed, it would level the playing field and ensure there is a fair ground for competition through competitive pricing aspects, which remain unsubstantiated up until the competition study is finalized.
Thank you very much.
For now, the Communications Authority has indicated they will be keen on setting up safeguards to prevent abuse of dominance. Abi Agina, KTN Business.
Now, motorists and commuters beginning midnight tonight have to dig deeper into their pockets as fuel prices went up in the latest monthly fuel price review released by the Energy Regulatory Commission. Diesel users emerged as the biggest losers, with the commodity going up by 1.17 shillings. The new prices will see super petrol in Nairobi retail at 101.05 shillings a litre, while diesel will retail at 90.44 shillings a litre. Kerosene will be sold at 67.96 shillings a litre. According to the Energy Regulatory Authority, the changes in this month's prices have been as a consequence of the average landed cost of imported super petrol increasing by 2.33% from $575.06 per ton in January 2017 to $588.47 per ton in February 2017. Diesel increasing by 3.84% from $500.78 per ton to $520.01 per ton, and kerosene increasing by 3.45% from $524.20 per ton to $542.27 per ton. Now, Treasury CS Henry Rotich will present the government's budget for the fiscal year of 2017-2018 in Parliament on March 23rd, the Treasury said on Tuesday. Kenya usually presents its budget in June, but it has advanced it this year due to the general election scheduled for August the 8th. The budget is expected to boost spending and projected higher revenue while cutting the fiscal deficit to 7.0% of GDP from 9.6% of GDP this fiscal year. It is also expected that in line with East African integration, the synchronized budgets of the fellow East African nations, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, will be read at the same time. And the advent of online publishing had been said will push publishing and printing business into oblivion, but close to a decade later, publishing, printing, and print machine manufacturers are still in business, with more investors like Gazelle Limited, one of the exhibitors at the ongoing ProPack East Africa Packaging, Printing, and Plastics exhibitions at the KICC, insisting that the printing business is not going anywhere and it's here to stay. The last few years have seen a growth in Kenya's printing industry because of the demand for school books, fueled by the free primary education that was started in 2002. The book printing business has seen a growth in the number of printers who handle book runs and other academic material. But even as many insist that fate of these printers could be hanging in the balance due to the cost of borrowing, players in the industry have come up with strategies to stay in business and avoid going to borrow.
Foreign investors, for that matter. So we're seeing many people looking at Africa as a continent at the moment. And if you look at Africa as a continent, I think Kenya sticks out in terms of importance in location, importance of available human resources in general. The Kenyan is very well educated. There's also a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in this country, which some of it is being directed in a negative way, but there's also positive developments as a result of that.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Let's now take a look at what's happening in the world of sports, starting with some rugby news. And former Kenya Rugby Union Vice Chairman Sasha Mutai is looking forward to bringing the Safari Sevens rugby tournament back to its former glory if elected the union's chairman in the forthcoming annual general meeting. Speaking to KTN News, Mutai, who has been out of the Rugby Union board for slightly over 3 years, is confident of clinching the top seat and streamlining operations. He will be facing the current chairman, Richard Omwela, and Western Bulls Wajinda Pape Sembi in the election set for the 21st of this month.
I'm coming back because there are lots of issues at Kenya Rugby Union. Players have been complaining. Teams have been complaining, coaches have been complaining that things are not going well. And I think it's hard for me to sit out and watch their situation get worse. So I think there's time for intervention, and time for intervention is now. I'd already been also vice chairman before. I'd done it for 2 years. I was director for 4 years. So I was looking to step up and to a step higher, where I could actually run policy, come up with a policy for the rugby union. When I put my hand to something and my mind to something, I get things done. Even my 2 years at the union, the job I was given, Safari Sevens chairman, I ran it successfully. I brought in the deal with Western Province as soon as I came, actually within a week of me becoming vice chairman. And that's the time you saw these big strides in the Sevens team. We came up with contracts first time that time. The union right now is taking players for granted, taking teams for granted. They think, things are okay. Things are not okay. Innocent Emilio is a very good rugby man. He's been frustrated by the office. The players are not happy. The officials in the team are not happy. We need to be humble enough to say that, yes, the people out there who played, this game is professional, okay? And we are playing against professional players, professional coaches who have been in systems, who learn. They go and learn and improve themselves all the time. this union is not supporting rugby. They're just there flying around the world on joyriding tours using the money that's meant for rugby. It's very funny that the Kenya Rugby Union is only giving 3-month contracts to development officers. What are you going to develop in 3 months? You have to give stability. You have to give people longer-term contracts with KPIs, what they need to achieve, and you need to support it. Now, Rugby 15 is for purists, and we want to make it a festival as well. I'm looking at having games the whole day, from the kids playing in the morning all the way to a Kenya Cup game at 7 o'clock under floodlights. We want a festival of rugby where families are involved. Parents will bring in their children, so that's what I want it to happen. And it has to happen like that for it to move. And we look forward to qualifying for 2019 in Japan. So I'm a hard man when I deal with this. I like challenges. When it's easy for me, it's boring. Okay, so I'm coming, and I know there's lots of challenges, lots of debts to clear up. I'm up to the challenge. I want to face it, and I've promised many things, and I keep my promises.
You know, Ben was just telling me that Arsenal is the greatest.
And she's trying to force some laughter.
No, like
let's
seriously,
go to
Arsenal?
our big question of the day, and we were asking you, do you think Kenyans led
This is my handwriting is horrible. It's like some of the doctors. Anyway, do you think Kenyans had to suffer this long for the deal they finally... Oh, no, the doctors had to? There's
suffered
the
for the
question.
100 days
Do you
for the
think
deal that
Kenyans...
doctors finally got, which reports say
Yeah.
is less than half of what they were agitating for. Very quickly to some of your views, and Chris Kibet says, doctors got backdated pay. Who shall resurrect the dead? God help us.
Ludwig Ouma, why take all this time? Finally, sign. What did the government lack and got today? The timing was choreographed, raises eyebrows.
And Philip Kilonzo tweets and says, yes, nothing can stand in the way of the power of millions of voices calling for change.
Mona K said the government has proved its low capability in handling serious matters.
Brian Kashmir says, yes, because they chose bad leaders, let it be a lesson to them.
And Vitalis Omboy, yes, it was worked for the best interest of the health sector. We shall heal, you say, hashtag.
Thank you for your texts and tweets.
Indeed, it has been great to have you with us here on KTN Prime. If you're an Arsenal fan, perhaps better days ahead, God willing.
I'm Ben Kitili. Many thanks for joining us, for all of us at KTN News. Thank you for watching, and good night.
I'm Sophia Wanuna. Remember, bright and early, we start our coverage of the State of the Nation address that will be later on in the afternoon. You want to keep it KTN News throughout the day. Have a blessed night.